I noticed before, about 5 years ago, we were working with womb life, being in the womb. And if you didn't pay enough attention to the placenta and to make sure you were properly breathing from the abdomen, the heart could feel like it was having to do too much work, something like that, or getting a little bit over something. I don't even know how to describe it. And in my practice, I had to properly include the placenta, and really with the breath, the best connection to the placenta is through the abdomen rather than the lungs, so it really drops you into the abdomen. Now, probably different with women. Women probably have a pretty good idea of the placenta, but I certainly didn't when I started doing that. And I looked into, what the placenta was. And it was interesting for me because it changed my experience of womb life. I just had this image that you're being fed by the mother's blood, and the placenta was something to do with that, and that maybe it filtered it or something, but I didn't really know what it was. But what I hadn't realized and changed my perception of birth was that the placenta is really part of the baby, and it's the baby's heart that is pumping the blood through the umbilical cord, through the placenta and back. So there's quite a lot of extra work done by the heart in that respect, but also there is that extra work of pumping the blood to the placenta and back, but also there's less work in that it's not having to pump the blood around the lungs, or not so much, it's just much finer. The capillaries and arteries to the lungs, because it's not taking oxygen from there, and also because the placenta will be doing a lot of the work of the kidneys and the liver and different organs. Maybe it's not having to pump so much blood through those organs. But if your attention is more in the lungs and you don't take the placenta into account, it has a bit of an effect on the heart. But as soon as you drop the attention into the abdomen, it has this good connection to the placenta, and then that just seems to balance everything. So we will be bringing the placenta into the meditation, and to orientate things, the placenta, the sac, the fluid within the sac, these are all formed from the baby. They're not part of the mother. So you have your own space in a way. It's not, as a baby, you're not just floating in the mother's womb and everything around you is the mother and the blood coming from the umbilical cord is the mother. You have your own kind of auric space. You've got this bubble of fluid around you, which a lot of that is urine, the amniotic fluid, whatever it's called. A lot of that is urine. It comes out from the baby's body, but also the baby, when the kidneys are forming later on, this is also urine, but it's very pure urine. It's, the detoxification is happening through the placenta rather than the kidneys as such. So you are not intruded upon as if you think there's you as a baby and everything else is the mother. You do have your space as you grow in the womb, but you will be totally interfacing with the mother as well. And from the mother, in a way, yours is the uterus, and then anything inside of that is to do with the mother, and then but this bubble inside of that is grown outside of the baby. So it's nice to have that little gestalt on viewing things. And I'll just show you, I'm not going to go into the workings of the placenta and everything. I just want to give an image to make the meditation easier. And I knew very little about anatomy until I started doing holographic breathing, and it so clearly brought me into my body and how different things were working. And I'd feel an organ working, I'd instantly look it up in the anatomy book to see what it looked like and what it did. And over the years I've become from knowing, I mean, I did two cranial trainings, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to the anatomy. But since holographic breathing came through, just everything, I refer back to the anatomy books to get that basic functioning idea of what I'm dealing with. And if you look at the pictures, you don't have to remember the names, but if you look at the pictures, it gives you an inner visualization of what you're dealing with. And if you know how it works a bit, it adds to that visualization. So you start off with a physical thing, but then that quite quickly moves into energetic forms and meditations and gives you a diving board to jump off of into energy work. And this is a huge book. I'm trying to hold it up. There you have a baby. Can you see the placenta? It's like the crescent moon shape. So it's quite big with the umbilical cord going into that. So, and then around that, the placenta makes about a third of the sac that the baby's in, and the sac extends from the placenta right around the baby. But you can only see the uterus there. But let's just see. Oh, there you can. So the sac is very thin. There's the baby in its sac. The fluid inside, it just comes out from the baby in different ways, and later on it is also pee. So there's the baby in this very fine sac, and everything within that and the placenta has been formed out of the baby, and it's the baby's heart that's pumping the blood around all of that. There's a very fine blood supply to that sac, and it's coming from the placenta. So the baby's heart is pumping to the placenta around the sac. The baby is creating that fluid. So as the baby in the womb, you can think of that as your space. We started off doing both the yellow energies and the lung energies. I wanted to go into the energies, but both of them actually moved into birth and this concertinaing of the body in holographic breathing, in that shortens on the in-breath and widens, lengthens on the out-breath and narrows, which is actually how it's seen also in cranial sacral therapy. And a lot of people, when they learn that, it feels a little bit strange because we're used to the breath. The experience of it is that it all expands in all directions. But for the abdomen to work, the abdomen shrinks top to bottom to cause that expansion. We don't so much feel the diaphragms coming together to cause the expansion. We just think, oh, it's expanding. The lungs do expand in all directions, but to produce that expansion, the diaphragm is tightening and pulling down, the muscles between the ribs are tightening and it's lifting. These muscles are tightening to the spine and to the jaw to lift the ribs up. So it's a contracting of the muscles to cause an expansion, and that is the only place in the body where everything can expand, because the breath can come into it. In the spine, the back of the ribs, you've got all the intercostal muscles from the top of the spine and the back of the head right down to the sacrum. There's muscles running and connecting to the vertebrae, and all of those muscles contract on the in-breath. So there's a contraction of the muscles. How much the spine physically contracts as those muscles pull together, I don't know. But the muscles are tightening and putting a pressure on the spine. Now, with the face, I'm not going to go into how it all works, but I talk about it and show how that the contractions of the muscles cause an opening and closing of the cranium, and also top to bottom shortening and lengthening of the cranium. And people are okay with that. People say, yeah, I can understand that and I can feel that. Now, the movement of the cranium in holographic breathing, cranial osteopathy, cranial sacral therapy is tiny. It's not measurable by any instrument, but you can palpate it and easily feel it. So I'm not saying the spine is any different to that. It may be a tiny movement, but for me it is a movement nonetheless. And for me it's larger than in the cranium, because the cranium is just bones. It's got these fine joints, but it's basically bones. So the bones are bowing. With each vertebrae there's a disc of cartilage with jelly between them. So to me it seems there is potentially a bigger movement. But for some reason people find it hard, or to start off with, that there could be a movement there or a feeling of movement. For me, it doesn't matter. Even if there was no movement at all, even if I was totally wrong and it actually lengthens rather than shortens, that doesn't matter to me, because when I experience it, shortening on the in-breath, lengthening on the out-breath. And when I allow myself to drop into that experience, what happens is that synchronizes with the skull and the brain, and it specifically works through the neurons of the brain, which are kind of where we experience the intellect. And it takes me into a different state of consciousness as that shortening and lengthening through the spine happens. It connects to a shortening and lengthening through the brain and the cranium, and I change from being the mind or part of the mind to viewing it. As the neurons start breathing, it changes my state of mind. So even if I was totally wrong, even if it's not shortening, even if it's the other way around, me perceiving it as that takes me into a deep meditation, and I start being able to process the intellect and mind, because I am no longer that. So we will be working with that now for a long time. Now, why it is pertinent in this particular webinar is for a long time when I started it, what was stopping me from allowing the spine to shorten on the in-breath and then lengthening on the out-breath was from the birth experience. If you think about it, before the baby comes up to contractions, it's pretty well been weightless. It's been floating in amniotic fluid. And then coming up to the birth, that maybe as it fills out the whole abdomen and is coming closer to the diaphragm, it may feel the pressure of the diaphragm coming up and down, which may shorten and lengthen it through the spine. But when it comes to the contractions, it's in the uterus, there's this incredible pressure top to bottom, and that is taken in the spine. If the spine wasn't there, the baby would just, it would be like this, it would just mush down to nothing, and then, you know, it would just do that. But because the spine is there, connecting the cranium to the pelvis, the pressure of pushing the baby out through the uterus, down through the vagina and the birth canal, is mostly taken through the spine. And let's get a balloon. I'm going to have to let a bit of air out of it. Hang on. My special balloon for showing uteruses in the womb. Okay, the see-through one is the abdomen. The pink one in the middle is the uterus. I haven't actually got another one blown up just to show the uterus, but on the in-breath, they're both contracting, breathing in, breathing out. So there's a shortening top to bottom in the abdomen and in the uterus on the in-breath. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. And then that is the same in the contractions. Now it's a shame I haven't got another balloon, sorry. As the contractions are the same, the contraction for me is an in-breath. It's a shortening top to bottom, and as the volume isn't going to change much, it'll also expand a bit to the side. So the contraction is like an in-breath, and then the space between the contractions is like the out-breath. So you get that movement in the abdomen. The clear one is the abdomen, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, and then deeper into the uterus. The contraction is like breathing in. The spaces between the contractions are like breathing out. And we are going to use the breath and this longitudinal motion through the body to give us the experience of birth. Okay. Let's just look at the different bits of birth first. Before we go into the birth, let's just look in a little bit more about how the muscles. It's not working as well as when I first made it. So let's just look at that physical motion of the muscles in the cranium. So as we breathe in, all the muscles are shortening to lift the ribs up, and some of those muscles are from the top of the sternum to the hyoid bone. So all of those muscles are shortening. As these muscles from the sternum to the hyoid shorten, if the jaw is relaxed, this also opens the jaw. So you get the jaw opens, and we keep the lips closed, we keep the tongue on the roof mouth, and that is how holographic breathing integrates into the breath, or is part of the breath. So here we have a pink Terminator. Oh, what's happened here? His muscles have fallen off. Okay, so as I pull these little cords, it will shorten the balloon. So you've got this muscle from the sternum to the hyoid. As that shortens to lift the ribs, it also opens the jaw. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And to balance that so the head isn't rocking, the muscle at the back has to tighten at the same time. So you get breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Because the lips are closed and the tongue is suctioned to the roof of the mouth, instead of the jaw opening any further, it opens a little bit, the pressure continues, but what happens is that vectors through the lips, it vectors through the tongue, it vectors through these muscles here, and it causes an opening and rolling forwards, breathing in, breathing out. And the same is reflected in the back, breathing in, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And then from the sides, these side ones, breathing in, breathing out. It creates the motion through the whole cranium, just very simply by the start of holographic breathing. I don't know why it's never been seen before, but as soon as you start doing it, it brings that into reality. The whole cranium and brain start to breathe in a way that they weren't breathing before, and more energy starts coming through the brain. The brain starts, for me, it all starts evolving. For me, this is an evolution system. As that energy starts, energy and breath starts moving through the brain, it starts enlivening and moving towards optimal performance. But also it's spiritual, it starts connecting to spiritual energies. So a whole thing goes off in holographic breathing. And I'm not a master of it. You know, every time I teach one of these webinars over the next 2 days, I kind of, it takes a while to get over it. But by the third day, and quite a few people say that, like, wow, it was great in the webinar, but for 2 days afterwards, I felt quite hard. It's because you're just processing a lot of stuff that was brought to the surface. And normally, the third day, you start getting the breakthroughs. And by the third day, a whole load of new information comes through. You know, at the beginning of it, I was thinking, I want to know it all. And now it's like, I don't want to know it all. I want new stuff every time I do a webinar. I want new information each time. So, with here's a face with a jaw there and a cranium here, so it's pulling down from both sides, breathing in. Is it going to work? Hopefully this will work. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Now if you look from the side, you look at this little thing here as it rotates, can you see that? It all widens. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Now that widening isn't just opening as I'm breathing in and everything's expanding. That expansion to the side it's pulling this way, that is putting a pressure all the way around that way, which is causing a pressure into the middle. So the pressure into the middle pushes it out. So it's broken. There we go. It's not going to work anymore. Hang on. Let's just hold that there. Breathing in. It's a pressure that's opening. It feels like as the lungs are just, it's opening because the pressure is edited out. And even though the sides of it feel like, they're just opening. It's not like we have muscles here to open them. There's a pressure in that's causing it to open that way. The same with the spine. Hang on, let me just take this cranium apart. See, the red Terminator was, this is the front. I've called this one bone because it actually is one bone. And this is the base, the balance, the abdomen, I think lungs, head, wings and legs. So that all balances on the spine and the face, opens that forwards and down, and this is the back and head. So it's breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, and that sits on the spine. So everything, the breath is pulling the cranium down onto the spine, breathing in, breathing out. So as it pulls down, there's a certain amount of give in these, or for me, not everyone may experience, but for me there's a certain amount of give in the discs, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And what I noticed for a long time was that wouldn't actually give way. The spine and the discs wouldn't give way until I remembered that experience of being in the womb, and suddenly from no pressure or little pressure, this pressure through the whole spine that feels like it's going to kill me. You're this little tiny baby, you can't, the pressure of this adult squeezing you in, and the whole spine is taking that pressure, and it's like, oh, that's going to kill me. And somehow I was holding the spine. But when I allowed that contraction, when I allowed the contraction from birth, okay, just squeeze me, then suddenly I properly got that motion in the spine, that, yeah, just let it give, let the spine completely relax, let it, rather than fighting against that force, let it, okay, whoosh, whoosh. And then that gave it that movement. Now as we get into adults, the discs are harder, more solid, but for me there was still that memory. So that is why I'm bringing it in here. So that now I will send out the recordings of a couple of the other birth ones with this, because they just go into that in much more depth, and I just don't want to keep going over it in depth every time. So you'll get the lectures from the last birth webinars, just so you can see that explained in much more depth. So let's just look a bit. Oh, I love that picture. I'll come to that in a minute. So here's a uterus. I don't think this is fully formed yet. I don't think this is 9 months. But notice it's not pressing down into the pelvic floor. For the whole first part of birth, the baby isn't being born through the pelvic floor. It's opening the cervix, so the baby's head is dropping, and it's dropping down through the cervix, or you can think of it as the cervix being pulled over the top of the baby's head. So there's no point in pushing, and it's counterproductive to push them, because it's not going to do anything and it will probably cause injury. You want the baby's head fully out of that, and then into kind of pressing into this area and against the pelvic floor, because at that stage this can contract to push the baby and try and push the baby out through the pelvis floor. But as much as it is pushing the baby's head against the pelvic floor, it is pushing its whole self away. So this shortens. In one way it's pushing the baby's head down, in another way it's pushing the whole uterus up. So at that stage it needs a bit of pressure behind it, kind of here, so that if it's got something behind it and the baby's head, now if it does a contraction, all of that pressure pushes the baby out through the pelvic floor. So as soon as the baby is out here into the second stage of birth, then that is the time to push, and that is the time we will start doing the longitudinal breaths, because it is this more thing. Before that we will be doing more horizontal breaths. We'll be doing like the cranium is opening to the sides, shortening front to back. The same movement is in the pelvis. The pelvis on the in-breath is opening to the sides and shortening front to back. So they're mirroring. There's breath in the pelvis, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And as it's doing that, as it's a circle, to do that, I'm not going to fully go into the anatomy. You can see it in the previous webinars, but the muscles cause a contraction front to back that help this experience of it expanding to the sides. So they match. The baby's head coming down into your own pelvis as the mother, they match. Let me just see if I've got all sorts of things, or did have, I can't see them. Where have they gone? Oh. Where is that? Oh, there they are. They got a bit flattened. I've had these, they're made out of paper. I had to put tapes around them today because they've all flattened. So if this is the pelvis, and that is the sacrum, the red bit, and it's like that, breathing in. So as it shortens front to back, it widens. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. And this motion helps the baby come down through it. The baby's head, this is the occiput at the back of the baby's head, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. In the womb, or in the pelvis where they're together, you've got they're opposite. You've got the baby's occiput there, and you've got the mother's sacrum there, but the movement mirrors, breathing in, breathing out. So it's the breathing motion of the baby coming down through the pelvis, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. So we will be doing more of that as the baby's head is coming down through the cervix. And then when it's through and you're into the pelvic floor, it's more top to bottom, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in. And we won't do that fully through the spine. I'll do different areas, because you can feel it through the top of the head to the pelvis. And even though it's going through the spine, you don't feel it so much. You feel it through the front of the body. And it has a different sensation. It still works on the brain, but it works on the brain in a different way. Always with this longitudinal motion, you've got to remember to breathe with the brain to make it smooth. But if it's just generally top to bottom through the diaphragms, or from the abdomen, or from the lungs, if it's the experience from the lungs connects to the cranial fluid in the brain, the experience from the abdomen, for me, connects to the astrocyte cells, and these do not hold the intellect. But as soon as you drop into the spine and you have it moving through the spine, you've not only got the vertebrae, you've got the dura, you've got the cranial fluid, you've got the spinal cord, you've got the nerves, and it connects more to the nerve pathways and the neurons, which much more houses the intellect. So as soon as it's moving through the spine, you're working on a different level. And for me, it's great. I just allow that, and it just takes me straight out of the thinking mind. It's just this deep, slow, very different energy. For a lot of people, I think it may feel a little bit inhuman, because we think of ourselves as the heart a lot and emotional. The mind doesn't so much have that feel to it. But everything else is held. Once you're breathing and working through the mind, that is what's holding the whole picture together. And as soon as you're viewing that rather than being that, all the bits below can start balancing. So there's profound, we can work with profound changes and activations as we go through our birth. And the activations we're going to work with today, the first one, these just started happening naturally when we were doing these, and then people who knew about birth pointed out to me, well, that actually happens. And if you think of the uterus as kind of a polar neck jumper, and it's here, and you're pulling it down over the head. When it gets to here, that's about 10 centimeters dilated. It starts off, it's thick at the top. I'll have to crouch down, and then as the contraction's happening, the baby's head is moving up through it, but also the uterus is pulling down around the baby's head, and it starts off, the cervix is quite thick, and it lengthens and then starts moving around the baby's head. And here it can't slide back after that point because it's just pushing into the side. So it's like here, and it's breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in. Here it's not going to go back there because the whole pressure is in. So there's this point between the first and second stages of labour where it's balanced in the middle. Now, in a few webinars before, when we got to that point, I was expecting it just to carry on, and then everything stopped. All the contractions stopped, everything settled down, and there was this deep silence. And I thought, it's over. We've given birth. But I let everyone go into that silence, and we did that. And at a certain point, the contractions kicked back in, but it was this longitudinal motion of the breath. And the birth lady afterwards said, no. It was beautiful that you let us sit into that activation, because she said most people would just go through that, even in birth, they just hurry through it. But there is a pause, the contractions stop or lessen as you get to this balance point. And what there is there's a huge activation through the third eye, the thalamus, the tentorium, right through here. You see, got the cervix right around there, and it's activating all of those areas in the central brain. So we're going to sit into that activation. The other activation is when we come and the vulva is opening here. Now the uterus is one type of energy, the vagina is another type of energy. The vulva, again, is a much higher energy. It connects to the crown chakra. It's called crowning, but the vulva is actually to do with the crown chakra. So in you as the mother, the vulva is opening, and the energy of that is connecting to the top of your head. Well, it's top back of your head. It's not just the crown chakra, it's back as well. And in the baby, that is the area that's coming out through the vulva. So that is opening in mother and baby, and the pushes through the uterus is pushing down in a way through the area of the vulva in the baby for men and women into the back of the head. So that's the second activation that we will be sitting into, opening the crown chakra. And in the long breaths, we will just be doing a general activation, the activation of the spine. There'd be no pressure or little pressure in it through birth, and suddenly there's all this pressure. So we're going to be letting the spine activate and looking at how that activates all the neural pathways through the brain at the same time. So we're looking at the activations. The third one, when the head is all the way out to here, there's no longer a pressure on the top of the head, but there's a pressure on the shoulders and the shortening and lengthening. So it's really activating the abdomen and the lungs and diaphragm for when the baby takes its first breath. So we're going to look at that as a bit of an activation for the breath and the lungs and the abdomen. Now I'm kind of rushing in a way, but I can see just talking this out is just knocking people out as I go through these different activations, because I don't want to just talk all night and tell you. I want to actually say we've got time for the meditation, but maybe I should slow up a bit because I can see everyone's going, whoa. And the next activation is when the baby is actually out. And then after about 10 seconds or so, when the chest is out and the abdomen is out and you're in the outside air, after 10 seconds or so, there's this impetus to take a deep breath, and you take your first breath. And this is massive, because it's not that you just start to breathe. This is why I had to bring in the placenta. You move from, in that first breath, it activates all the capillaries in the lungs to open, the blood to start moving from the heart through the lungs and picking up the oxygen and spreading around the body. And you move away from the placenta working and the blood coming up and down the placenta. So you're changing worlds in a way. You're changing from the placenta, all the nourishment, the blood coming from the mother, to the oxygen coming through your own lungs. And because the umbilical cord is now outside and cooler, all the gel in the umbilical cord starts going solid, and that stops the blood flow in the umbilical cord. So at that stage, the blood flow in the umbilical cord is getting less, and also through birth, going through these different diaphragms, the umbilical cord is getting compressed, and the oxygen content, the carbon dioxide in the baby is going up because the umbilical cord is getting compressed. And then outside, as soon as it starts getting cold, the gel goes solid, all the arteries and all the blood flow stops. So the baby's got to breathe in. And there's this sudden you haven't got this pressure all around you. So it's a combination of the carbon dioxide going, but also as there's no pressure, suddenly you go and you take that first breath and you switch from one system to the other, and then you're kind of independent. So you're getting your breath, you're getting your oxygen through the air rather than from the placenta and from the mother to the placenta. So you're getting your oxygen hopefully through your nose. You come on the breast, it's another activation, and rather than getting your food coming through the placenta, you're getting it as milk. The organs are all starting to work and processing that food. So in the first breath, you're activating the oxygen and moving away from the placenta, coming onto the nipple, you're activating the whole digestion to work, and it's changing from the placenta to, it's connecting, it's on an energy level, well, on a physical level. Suckling is just like a soft form, or holographic breathing is like a subtle form of suckling, really. And that whole motion of suckling, the same thing is happening in suckling. All the bones start adjusting, start moving, so it starts balancing through the whole body, energetically connecting you to the mother's heart. Through the umbilical cord, you were connected in a physical way to the mother's heart. Through suckling, you're connected in an energetic way to the mother's heart. And these different activations are going off in one way or another in the mother at the same time. They're so connected and working in different ways. And you are in this meditation, you know, you are the mother and you are the baby. The baby's head is coming down inside your own pelvis, and you're being born through your own pelvis. So what you may have missed in birth through fear, being hurried, drugs, anesthetics, C-sections, all sorts of different things coming into play. And just being, you're a baby and the mother is a mother, or the other way round, you're giving birth, you're the mother and the baby is another, the baby is doing its own thing. But in this meditation, you are the mother and you are the baby. You're not going to die, you're not going to need a C-section, you're not going to need anything. So you can take as much time as you want to go through these activations fully in a way you may not have been able to do that in birth. So that can have a very powerful effect. Maybe a bit late, in my case 64 years late, but at least you get it. At least you get it this lifetime. Maybe you won't need to do the same thing next lifetime. And we don't know what the effects of holographic breathing are going to be. We really don't know. There's nothing else like it, really. So within the scheme of things and within health, we don't really know what's in store for us. But I think getting these activations hugely helpful for our health and spiritual well-being. So I've kind of rushed through that because I know it takes me a long time to get through it all. Let me check on the time. Okay, it has. It's taken me nearly an hour. So it's a long talk, but it's also a long meditation. The meditation's going to go on 45 or 50 minutes, something like that. Let me just put your hand up if you want to ask a question in any way. Okay, let me just sort that out. Yeah, because for me, when I first started working with this movement of the spine in myself, something was stopping me, and what it turned out to be was that initial pressure of the contraction, which I thought was going to kill me. Just felt like it was just going to, you can imagine, you huge little baby in this massive muscle squeezing you top to bottom, really, your head's in, your pelvis under, so it's all pressuring directly through the spine. That's going to kill me. But then as I started working with that more and just allowing that and allowing myself to go, so if you start being able to do that with your spine, you're literally processing the contractions you had at birth. And the fear, I mean, that is a massive pressure for a little baby. And it may not be that fear in other people, but there was definitely that. And once I I thought, well, my spine must be able to take that because I'm not dead, and you can't stop it anyway. You know, you can kind of psychically try and stop it, but you can't stop it. It's happening, whatever. So to go with the river and allow that, and then suddenly, oh, here we go. So I didn't spend much time saying what we were going to do. We're going to drop down into our own pelvis as if we're being born through our own pelvis. So the baby's head is coming down into the pelvis, and it's backwards. The face is facing into the sacrum, and the back of the head is inside the pubic arch. And to start off with, it's a little bit sideways. The baby's coming in sideways, so you'll have one cheek or the other up against the sacrum at the back of the pelvis. I want to show you one picture, because we're going to be working with this movement through the diaphragm and whole pelvis, whole abdomen, and into the pelvis. There's just a great picture in this book of the muscles at the back. And how much extra, even though it's just breathing with your abdomen, how much kind of muscle power you've got to do that. Now, not everybody sees it or does it in the same way as I experience it, but I experience a lot of the muscles when we're working with the shortening and lengthening of the spine. I feel it, or with holographic breathing, I feel it as a whole movement through the whole body, with generally all of the muscles shortening on the in-breath and all of the muscles lengthening on the out-breath. There's this magnificent picture of all of the muscles in this. That's the, you've got the diaphragm at the top here, and you've got the back of the diaphragm there. The baby's head, the face is into the sacrum in here. You've got the psoas muscles either side. You've got the back of the head up against the pubic arch there. Notice how the psoas muscle, even though they go through, notice how it's mirrored in the diaphragm. And as the psoas muscles comes up inside the pelvis here, it's mirrored in the quadratus muscles, and how the quadratus muscles are mirrored. You can see it all rising and then mirrored into the diaphragm. And for me, there's a pull all the way through, and this helps with the, not just the diaphragm. See all these muscles from the diaphragm coming down the spine, these are all helping to pull it down. But for me, these also, as well as the muscles behind the spine shortening, in the shortening and length of the spine, for me these all contribute. And this connects, the psoas muscles for me connect the movement of the diaphragm to the legs. So most of them are connecting into the pelvis, but the psoas muscles takes it through the pelvis, connects that whole motion to the legs, which is just wonderful for getting this opening through here. And not only does that help with the shortening and lengthening of the spine, it is also front to back, so it helps with the shortening and lengthening of the pelvis this way. And because it, see how it comes around here, as it tightens, it's also pulling the pelvis a bit out to the side. So on the in-breath, the psoas does fantastic things. In my mind, I know other people may not see it in the same way, but it will shorten and lengthen the spine right down into the legs. It will open and close the pelvis sideways, and front to back it will close it on the in-breath and lengthening it on the out-breath. So, but look at the power of those muscles right up into the diaphragm. So we're working with that, and the baby's head's right down in here. The face, as we get into it, to start off with, it's a little bit side on. One of the cheeks will be up against the sacrum, but as you get fully into it, The face turns directly into the sacrum. The back of the head is against the pubic arch, and it's kind of like it's going down a gully. It rotates around the sacrum and back of the head comes out through this area here. Once the head is out, the shoulders can't get, the back of the head comes out first here, but the shoulders can't get out through here, and the baby has to turn to the side so its shoulder can come out from underneath the pubic symphysis there, and then once that's out, the second shoulder can come out, which will be up against the sacrum. All right. So probably people here aren't thinking of giving birth now, but if you were, you'd be much better equipped. It's a bit not possible for me at all, or Andre. But men, this happened to me. It just happened. I was breathing and I started giving birth to myself, and I'm a man. Men can have this experience. I'm not saying it's in the same way as women. I've got no idea, but I feel like I'm giving birth profoundly in the same way as I'm being born, and the different men I've taught it to say, yeah, they feel it in that way. I mean, honour to all of the women. Obviously, you've either given birth, you've got that equipment, which I don't have, so honour to all the women, but men can also feel we're a lot the same. Oh, let's bring out the clitoris. As the baby is coming down, this clitoris is a bit big for this pelvis. As the baby is coming down through the vulva, it's also coming down through the clitoris, and so what is the same nerves that feel pain in birth are the same nerves that give pleasure in sex, and if you relax into the sensations of it, it can be a hugely pleasurable event. All right, let's go to it. Heads down.